Well, so we told you we'll be having discussions on education. The strike is continuing across all public schools, and the unions are involved. So we have the Ghana National Association of Teachers, the National Association of Graduate Teachers, the Coalition of Concerned Teachers as well, and they're all involved in all this. At least yesterday we got a hint of what the numbers they were debating were about, in excess of just a little 30,000, and employer Ghana Education Service had difficulties with those numbers as to whether there were some anomalies in the payments, etc. But alongside us, we're having that discussions. Teachers also started giving us messages. Teachers who were attached to the public school saying even we're not writing end of term examinations just because of related issues of the implementation of the new curriculum, the absence of the textbooks, and its impact, etc. So we wanted to have a thorough discussion on all these subjects, and what a way to have it. Daniel Afedu. Mr. Daniel Afedu is a Deputy General Secretary of NAT in charge of administration. He's here, and thank you for joining me as well.
Thank you.
It's also a great delight for me to have Dr. Clement Apak, the Member of Parliament for Busa South, a ranking member on the Education Committee of Parliament.
Actually, deputy ranking.
Deputy ranking.
Yeah, it looks like it's been a while since I've been here, so we usually greet him bully as well, as you know. We do the Soliwa.
So we have a deputy ranking member on Parliament Education Committee as well. Right. Yeah. Okay, so now let's get into the groove, and since you belong to NAT straight away, from yesterday, what has transpired in relation to the concerns you've been raising?
Yeah, yesterday, thank you and good morning to your listeners. Yesterday, I think the history to this strike is far too fetched. It has been there since 2016, as we have said. So I think on the 29th, there was a meeting. And at that meeting, we made it clear. At a point, we didn't even have to walk out of the meeting.
Yeah, 29th of November.
November, yes.
Well, just for the sake of clarity.
And then we gave 5th December as a deadline for payment. And on that 5th, we realized that our employers were not forthcoming with our demands. So we, unions, the only power we have is to lay down our tools. And yesterday, we wrote the letter, and we had a press conference on Thursday and Friday. Monday, yesterday, we started. And yesterday morning, I must say, we were invited to the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations. We had some discussions, but it was inconclusive, which means that the strike continues.
You care to share some of the content of those discussions?
Yeah, we were, in fact, the crux of this issue was that, you know, the numbers involved, according to even GS own data, we had over 120,000 members involved, according to them. They've paid, and the one we are talking about, the outstanding numbers are over 30,000, as you said. But then, our worry about this particular issue was that the audit, normally, audit is done by the Auditor General. After the Auditor General has finished with their audit, they send the input to the Control Accountant General Department. The Control Accountant General will give the document to their audit unit. They do that, and after that, payment was done. But this time, they said the first two, we have gone through this about the 4th phase. The first two, they did so. But the third one, they realized after the controller internal audit, they realized there were some still anomalies. So it was sent back to the GES, and that was sorted. Then this particular one, too, the same thing was done. Our challenge was that you said they had 1,847 that had been validated. So our question was, how many of these had anomalies? If, say, 100, and according to them, 1,200 were cleared for payment. If they were, then why don't you pay those ones whilst we take your time to look into the rest? This is where we had a problem.
Within attached to the 1,200 were an additional 500 something that you thought had difficulty.
Yes.
And so the assumption was that even if just a range of 1,800, you could find about 500 having anomalies, then subsequently, if you do the segregation, you could get some extrapolations made. So is the extrapolations that's the point of argument for the employer? Is that not it?
Yes.
Okay.
So
so it means that the Ghana National Association of Teachers and your other allied agencies, you agree in principle with the employer, with government, so to speak, with this argument?
That, yeah, we agree. What that we are saying is that, yes, it's state funds, and we will not be, as a responsible unions, will not sit down for you to throw away state funds. What we are saying is that the thing is 1,847, according to their own documents. If 1,847, and you said 500 or so,
then pay the rest.
Pay the rest
of the 1,000.
Of the 1,200
for the subsequent.
Exactly. So you have solved the problem. Then we pay. But this, I don't know why our employers were. So
your problem were with the holistic delays, so to speak.
Yes, and because the delays, it has been promised and failed, promised. So what is the guarantee that this time when we back down, they are going to do because the first agreement was that was signed in August, was that after October salary, they were going to pay the first, but this particular one that we are talking about. We also have some, I read that date back between 2017 and 2019, and that would have been done after the November salary. The October salary had been paid, nothing was done. November salary was paid, and we were expecting to have even had the second one. Now you are going to give us the first one, and even that, you are not able to pay all. Fine. Even if you haven't paid all, the rest that didn't have problem, if you had paid, would have been fine. And now you are saying that you want to go back, check all. Yesterday, the technical man was giving a lot of explanation. They have to check them one by one. They have to put all into the system. We felt that it's a tactic just to delay the process. And our members out there have waited patiently. They are losing it because somebody had worked for 4 years without salary. The person would have borrowed and they want money to pay. After the fact, now you look at 2016 to now, if you look at the value of the money, it has depreciated. And even if you give it to them now, at least it's better. Now you still keep postponing. So that's why we are saying that it is now or never. We are tired.
The concerns of these groups, have they come to you? And as the education committee, what are you doing? Especially you being a deputy ranking.
First of all, let me say good morning to you and to my colleague, and good morning to viewers, and to greet the people of Wholesale South.
Soluna.
First of all, I think it must be put on record that any time teachers go on strike, it is bound to have a negative impact in as far as teaching and learning is concerned. The reason is because we all know the importance of education and the fact that it is the surest tested way of improving one's quality of life and also allowing people to live their full potential. We know we are all here by virtue of having obtained an education and by virtue of having been taught by teachers. Having said that, I think that the case that the teacher unions are making has merit. We are yet to receive a formal complaint as a committee, and although it is quite possible that the matter may have been presented to the chair of the committee and the ranking member, and perhaps they are yet to brief my good self and other members of the committee. By virtue of this issue being as public as it is, I believe that I have what it takes to also share some opinions and proffer ideas. As the representative of NAT indicated, the teachers feel frustrated, they feel betrayed, and they feel that the employer, in this case GES government, is not being forthright in addressing their issue. And he made a comment to the effect that only at the end of last month, November, a meeting was held, some firm agreements were reached. Yeah. And so they had expected that the employer would execute in as far as the agreement is concerned. That has not happened. And then issues are raised about discrepancies regarding the list that was submitted to be beneficiaries of these outstanding allowances. Now, I see their case to have merit, not because I think that it is okay for our wards to have to go through the current trauma of not being taught, which is not as a result of their doing, But I say their case has merit because the entity that is supposed to satisfy them, which had made the promise, in their opinion, has sought to take them for granted. And they feel they have come to a stage where they can no longer tolerate, and therefore this is a reason for them to take the ultimate decision, which is to go on strike. Now, as you said, if you had a list of just about 2,000, just for the sake of argument, I'm paraphrasing, and you determine that about 500 on that list, you are not satisfied with the content of the information associated with those names, what prevents you from going on to execute payment for those in that same batch that you have confirmed don't have any blemishes, to ensure or to justify withholding of the payments? If they had done that, that would have given the teacher unions faith and hope that action will be taken. But using the 500 names that, you know, GES claims has some discrepancies associated with them as a basis to withhold the processes that would allow for the bulker majority to have gotten their arrears, I definitely think has every reason to provoke the type of reaction that we are seeing. So in my humble opinion, the right thing to do is to honor those that you have cleared whilst you work to try and verify in collaboration with the teacher unions regarding those that you have flagged as, you know, presenting some discrepancies. But the wholesale withholding of going through with a process that was agreed upon clearly was provocative. And I must add that in these types of developments, the posture, the attitude, the language of the employer is very important. I say so because in the wake of this, the allegations are that the teacher unions have chosen this time to embark on this action because they are being instigated by the NDC.
Is that why you say that the language is not?
Yes, because you don't do that. When you do that, you infuriate them. I mean, these are teachers, for God's sake. They are intelligent, and that is why they've been able to nurture people like you and me. They know their rights. They know their needs. They know arrangements, they know agreements, and they know promises when promises are made. So that when you fail to go through with assurances that you have given them, and they choose to take an action that we all agree is definitely going to impact effective teaching and learning, then you turn around and blame your political opponents. How do you think they are going to feel? So the language and the posture itself is combative. And when you do that, you are further alienating them from the type of amicable solution that we would need to ensure that teaching and learning resumes.
The December 2 meeting, for which you were expecting that the consensus of November 29 would have been perhaps outlined to you, and the payment plan also structured and communicated to you. Did you agree, even though you didn't go to discuss the impending related issues from December or from November 29, that you would wait within the period of the Christmas for those payments to be made? The 30,000 excess.
No, you see
that didn't come up.
It didn't come up.
Because yesterday we spoke to the communication director of the Ministry of Education. It seems to be that seemed to be the position.
You see, the issue was that, you see, anytime you go on this kind of negotiation, the employer will have a position, you, the union, also have your position. And their position was that, yes, they agree these things are there, they are going to pay, but they want to rectify the anomalies before they pay all once. And we were saying that, no, we have come too far. These things have been there for far too long. Now members are frustrated, they are on us. So why don't you pay the ones? That is the bone of contention now. There are some that had no problem.
You still haven't come to a certain resolution with government,
no.
Not even with the.
In fact, that meeting ended inconclusively. We walked out of the meeting because our demands, they had a position, we also had, and at a point we reached a statement. We were not making any progress. We felt that it wasn't.
When you speak to the teachers on the field, especially those that have been affected, it looks like the grievances and the frustrations from even implementation of a new curriculum and all the frustration of the absence of materials to aid, complement those they teach, etc., all seem to have also incurred their wrath. So it seemed to have played out, the opportunity seemed to have played. So the teachers and the unions are just taking advantage of the situation to become very much irresolute.
No, it's not taking advantage. I've always said that in Ghana.
Well, if not taking advantage,
it's maybe coincidence. You see, in Ghana, for someone to choose a young lady, young man to choose a profession like teaching, then you see that that person is ever ready to die for this country. Why am I saying this? If you look at teachers' working conditions in general, in fact, it is nothing good to write home about. Even our own children that we teach, you go to class, you ask them, how many of you want to be teachers? If you have a class of about 40, you'll be lucky to have 1 or 2. Why? Because out there, the conditions are not good. And so when we are there and some little things that we want, give it to us, and you are not giving it, of course the people will not be happy. And if you are leading a union, a group like that, you are always under attack, that you are not doing anything, and this notion that you go and collect money from the people and you go away. But let me just touch on this political twist. In fact, if there is any political party that should take credit from this strike, then it can't be NDC. Why am I saying this? Am I saying this because the arrests we are talking about were arrests that came about as a result of a policy that was introduced, not more than 3 months arrears policy, 2012, 2016. And these arrests that we are talking about. So if a political party whose regime created that arrest comes and advises that, oh, go and hit the street, and that we are in support of you and we also do it, then I think we are not even being fair to ourselves. Let me say that we, the teacher unions, we are non-partisan. We work with governments. Whoever is in government, we work with them. And let nobody think that we are influenced by any political grouping or any other pressure. No.
Why not?
Why?
Anything is possible under the sun.
No, but you see, it's possible, but in this circumstance, it can be possible. If you go create the problem, and even, let's say, somebody is trying to resolve it, and we have got into a crisis, why can you say that we are taking credit for that? No. So we are saying that we not, our mission, in our mission state, we say we are non-partisan. And look, the teachers union that we are on strike, our membership is over 300,000. We cut across the political divide. If, let's say, you are MPP, and we are doing something that hurts the MPP government, and you are a member of the union, will you be happy? No, they will demonstrate even against us. So as for the teacher unions, we have a work plan. Let me say that this is a work plan that dates far back as 2017 that we plan. This man will do that. Anytime, sometime he gets there, they will renege, give reasons. We say, fine, we are in this together, we agree. But this time we are getting to a point that we feel that enough is enough. Let us get this out once and we'll move on. So that is the position. We are not influenced by any political party and will not be influenced by any. Thank you.
How do we come to some resolution to this crisis? It looks to be an impasse which should have been avoidable.
Well, first of all, he is right that the allowances in question span a very long period of time. And indeed, but that is what governments are about. The state remains, but parties win and lose power. Policies are initiated, they are implemented. Well, you inherit assets and liabilities. So, although it is indeed the case that these processes began before the advent of the current government, they knew that they had a responsibility to remedy it. And that is why they had agreements about how to go about remedying it. And largely, if the issue is that there isn't enough funds to address the matter, then I think that it should be made known. But if the funds are truly available, I don't see the difficulty in effecting payment for those names that have been cleared.
Clearly, from government's position,
waiting,
the data they have is problematic.
But then that is where the stalemate comes in. You say the data you have is problematic, but you say that it is not the entire data. There are there is a segment of the data that is wholesome, so to speak. So they are saying, act on the aspect or the component of the data that you believe is wholesome, whilst you address and look into the aspects that you are saying are questionable. I don't think that this should be a very complicated issue to deal with, except, of course, there is some underlying factor. And the only possible reason, perhaps, is the unavailability of funds. And therefore, government may be using this issue of wholesale delay to audit and make sure that, you know, the entire repertoire of the list meets their satisfaction, and by doing so, buy some time to try and prepare financially to deal with the matter. But if that is the case, make it known, because simply the argument to me, you know, is very faulty, because you can pay some whilst you work to address those that you say have not met your criteria yet of receiving payment. But you see, you made a very important point earlier that I thought is also worthy of discussing, since we are talking about education. You spoke about the, if you like, the discomfort that many teachers are facing.
Yeah, because
and I know
that's actually our next line of conversation.
Very well. I know individual teachers who feel uncomfortable with the current state of affairs. And if you take the basic school system, for example, one of the biggest challenges to teachers and indeed to students has been the lack of textbooks to accompany the newly introduced standard-based curriculum. And this has been in effect since January the 10th, 2019. The term is about ending. And if not
we just started the
if not for the current
we started the academic year in September.
Yeah, September 10th. So I say the term is about ending.
You said January.
Oh, okay, September. The term is about ending. And ideally, preparations should be going on for at least students to be tested on.
I think this week they should have been, ideally, by your calendar, they should have been.
Yes, right. what they have learned and what they have understood. And so for the teachers to be able to assess them and then know their strengths and weaknesses as part of the effort to better guide them. As we speak, there are no textbooks based on the new curriculum. When this issue came up in the wake of the realization that comprehensive sexuality education was captured in some of the curricula, particularly the English language, Ghanaian language curricula, we were told that packages were being provided to teachers and that those packages were sufficient to allow for teaching and learning based on the new curriculum. Some of us raised concerns because we felt that it was not prudent and it was not the best to bring to an end in totality the old curriculum and bar the usage of material.
But what were you expecting?
From the old curriculum.
Once a new curriculum is coming.
When the teaching and learning material,
you mean its rollout,
to accompany the new curriculum was not ready. So as we speak now, in all honesty, if you ask any teacher.
So what was your suggestion? That we should have started maybe perhaps next year?
Well, yes. There was no reason why they couldn't have postponed it. You could have launched it and then taken the time to do all the preparatory work, which also includes producing the requisite teaching and learning material. And when we talk about teaching and learning material, we talk about textbooks, the assumption that many make is that the worry is about the teachers. And so the response is that teachers had their parts.
Yes.
But the students also require textbooks. You should be able to go to class. And after your teacher teaches you, when you go home, you should have some material which should allow you to be able to go over.
Well, you have your notes.
And understand.
The notes that is dictated on the board.
Exactly. So this in itself continues to be a problem. And some of us have wondered what teachers have been doing. And I know they are very creative. Many of them are very, very good at improvisation. I'm the son of a teacher, so I know. But without the requisite standardized resource and without the requisite standardized textbooks, your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah.
I mean, when you say they can go on the internet and find resources, for example, I mean, is government going to provide the resources for them to buy data to get on the internet? to access material that they can then use to prepare to go and teach. And even if the teachers had their own resources, which I know they don't, as we are speaking about the conditions of teachers, to go and buy data so they can go on the internet and then do research and be able to prepare lesson notes and to instruct. What of the students? So that in itself is also a source of frustration to teachers, and I would say to students, and even a lot of parents. And then you look at that within the context of the indications that plans were even underway not to sanction the writing of exams at the end of this present term. And then you ask yourself, what is the justification for that?
Well, they were not going to write exams. Not that the plans were advanced. Because
yes.
No, teachers were planning. When I say plans were advanced, no, I'm talking about teachers, because yes, teachers always plan.
Well, so for example, for example, I have a couple of friends,
yes,
who have confirmed to me,
yes,
either in voice, through phone and messages, that their schools, the public schools you're teaching, they're not going to write end of term examinations.
Yes, you see.
So I want, and they said that this was in consultation with the various circuit heads or the district heads of education, and that they said they were going to go have some refresher or some training before they do the subsequent. Yes. I don't know whether Nat is aware of.
Yeah, well, thank you. You see, the issue is about this same the standard-based curriculum.
What about it?
The standard-based curriculum? We are saying that yes, we are moving from. You know, our education has been examination-oriented. The main purpose of this is move away from the examination level and develop in our children critical thinking, initiative, and all that all of us complain that our education system is lacking. So what the new curriculum is saying, that we need to develop even an assessment model, which is different from what we are doing now. As we are doing now, the curriculum that we are practicing until the introduction of this new one.
New one.
Yes,
this new one.
Proud to the new one. You teach at the end of the term, you write your exams, and that is the end.
All.
That is the end. But this one, they are introducing new, because if the child at the end of the day...
So we hadn't introduced all that before the rollout?
No. So the issue was that the program has been introduced before discussing the examination or assessment model. They call it assessment because it's not only going to be exam, other things are involved. So the question is that as the stands down in this term, December, we are not prepared and ready to have that assessment go through. So this exam is for those who are on the standard-based curriculum. For the JHS who are yet to be rolled on the program, they are going to write exam. And even that, we have a little challenge. And the challenge is that as a teacher, one of the things you do is after you have trained the child, you have taught them, at the end of the day, you evaluate. And the evaluation
but the JHS are not yet on the new.
Yes, so that's where I'm coming from. That's why I'm saying that for the JHS,
they are using the existing.
Yes, they are supposed to write the exams. But even the exams, normally what happens is that as a teacher at the end of the term, I should set my questions, because maybe I teach in a difference you do. I might have covered a certain topic, you have not. So based on what I have taught and assessing my student, I set questions. But it came to a time that the Ghana Education Service at the district level will organize exams. And sometimes the sad aspect is that the questions are not set by the teachers. They go and buy questions from question bank and they use. And the teachers have been complaining. We have taught the children, give us opportunity to assess our children. Okay, so to the extent that in January 2018, when we had our National Delegate Conference, it was one of the resolutions. And thank God, when we came out, government...
you mean that students or pupils within a certain jurisdiction,
yes,
will write
a common exams, like a Krametro, then a Krametro JHS.
Only for JHS?
Yes, for now. Yes. Okay. So what we are even saying is that, yes, the exams are going to be conducted.
And they did it every year or only for Form 3s?
They were doing it for even Form 1, first term, second term, third term. What we're saying is that fine, if you want to even stand.
So they write like a district-wide?
A district-wide, and all of you are writing the same questions. And we feel that is not the best. Because
it's like the U.S. model system.
No, you see, for example, the conditions in the schools are not the same.
We're advancing.
Yes, we're advancing, but let's hasten slowly. Because if I'm teaching in a school where even the conditions are not too, teachers are not even enough, conditions are not good. At the end of the day, you bring, and even, let's even standardization fine, but even the kind of questions that were set and sold by these banks were substandard. And some people were joking about some of the questions that came out. So we felt that it was important that the teachers themselves were given
Were
the
there some of the questions that were on social media that people were making fun
maybe.
of? Okay.
So we had issues with that. But the challenge is that, you see, the education in Ghana, governments over the years have been spending a lot of money on education, but we are not seeing the desired result.
But you, the teachers, have refused to?
Yes, we have not refused because the conditions are just not allowing us to do what we're supposed to do. Because if we're a teacher and you need teaching learning materials to teach, if you have not seen a computer before and you are asked to teach ICT, how do you teach the ICT? If you are there, you don't have electricity in where you live, and you have access, you don't have textbooks to work with. So the resources to even work with, I don't even want to go to infrastructure. So the condition of the teacher, if we really want to have education, quality education that all of us are looking for, then attention must be paid to the teacher. The teacher must be the center of all these that we are talking about. Because you bring all the beautiful programs, beautiful curricula, and the teacher who is supposed to champion it is not motivated, is not well trained, is not well resourced. It will be very, very difficult for us to get there. So always with the unions, we have always called on government that, yes, you are doing well, you are the free SHS, for example, very fantastic policy, but if the teachers who are supposed to oil this, for example, some of the schools that were built, you go and build a school. I was working in the Eastern region before I came here. Afram Plains, there's a town called Menchenfre. It's an isolated community. If you build a secondary school in that community, and there's no bus to convey students from the adjoining villages to attend, and there's not even a bungalow for any of the teachers there. And if I'm teaching in, say, Presec or Accra Academy, and you ask me to go and teach in that school, definitely I will not go, because the things that will help me do my work are not there. So what we are saying is that the teachers' problems have been there for far too long, but we have come to a time that we need to pay attention to the teacher. The teachers feel disrespected.
Okay, so straight away, let's go to the Institute for Educational Studies, and Peter Patianti is with the Institute for Educational Service, joining us on Skype. Good morning to you, Mr. Yanti.
Good morning.
Have you done an assessment of the situation yourself, especially in the public schools, in which it's now being resolved, they're not going to have an assessment by way of the examinations usually that are used, even though, of course, we do know across the world examinations are not the only means by which you can assess students, etc. But what those impacts could be ultimately in the public schools?
Yeah, we have spoken to some of the teachers and then the authorities involved. Technically, I must say that the decision is in the right direction. You see, the problem is that there was not enough planning for the rollout of the curriculum. That is what we are seeing. Because if you have rolled out a new curriculum, then what it implies is that you do not examine the students on any other thing but based on the new curriculum that you have rolled out. So if there were timelines for the delivery of these policies, we would have gotten to a stage whereby by this time the assessment framework would have been developed and the teachers would have used the new assessment framework that is in line with the new curriculum to assess the students. So it's all about the timelines and the planning that went to the implementation of this. The design, the development, and the implementation of this curriculum. If not, then this would not be an issue, because there are certain standards in the curriculum that we would want to assess, we would want students to exhibit, we want students to demonstrate. And therefore, if you are coming out to conduct an exam which would not focus on these standards, like the critical thinking, the collaborative, the communication, the digital, those 6 key strands in the curriculum, then there's no use for the assessment. Again, the focus of the new curriculum seems to target not only the paper examination that we do, but the complete development of the child. So the assessment framework look at the contribution of the child right from the beginning of the term to the end of the term. And if you have such an assessment framework, you cannot conduct an exams at this time when that framework has not been fully developed and deployed to the teachers. So we understand the situation. The only problem is that the planning and the timelines did not meet well, and that is why we are where we are now.
Mr. Yanti, did we know by September, at the beginning of the implementation or rollout of this program or the new curriculum, that we're not going to have an assessment in the form of the examinations across the public schools of Ghana?
I think that the authorities would be aware. You see,
I'm asking this because I'm having this supposition that you would have interacted with teachers and stakeholders across the divide.
Yes, the teachers were not aware they were not going to have exams. For that one, I can say for sure. But then the development of the new curriculum process, everybody who is in curriculum development knows that the curriculum that we develop will come with their materials, the teaching and learning materials, alongside the assessment framework. So that's why I keep going back to the timelines. So if we had a very good timeline that we were so strict about, we would have seen that as soon as the curriculum was developed, the next thing would have been the development of tests. That is how it has been with our development of tests in Ghana, because you cannot develop the textbooks while the curriculum is not ready. So normally, you develop the textbooks while the curriculum is ready. And note, we should also note this, that the NACA, I mean the authority responsible for the development of the curriculum, they are not those responsible for the development of the textbook. So if we are fair here, we realize that the teachers' resource park were ready with the development, the curriculum when they brought it out. So if maybe going forward, we want to seize that power and give it to that particular body to continue with the development of the curriculum and the test, then we can hold them responsible for the mishap that we are having now. Then the assessment framework is within their jurisdiction, and we were thinking that by this time that assessment framework would be in place. Of course, they would have they had their timelines, but maybe they had challenges, and that's why we are where we are now. But it is not an excuse for anybody. I think that we should be serious with the planning of these policies going forward, especially when we are now working on the new curriculum for the GSS and the SHS. We should be guided by this challenge so that we don't go back to these issues again.
Yeah. Okay. Just please be. How do you respond to that? It looks like perhaps you, the parent organizations, who are the key stakeholders, the pressure groups, the union, you just didn't ask the right questions before.
Oh, yes.
Because it looks like you have left the pupils and the parents of these pupils in limbo of a sort.
Yeah, like he said, we had a representative on NACA who was always briefing us on from time to time on development. And it looks as if, as we said, maybe the best thing for us to have done was to have waited to have these things in place. But I assure you, we had always raised the question, we had asked the questions, because the teachers themselves who are going to implement. Again, I was saying that sometimes when we are doing this, the teacher factor is sometimes not taken so seriously. I believe that the teacher factor had been taken very seriously, because the teacher is teaching and does not even at the end of the day knowing that or thinking that he's going to assess the child, only to be there for just about a week or 2 weeks to the end of term. They tell you, because we are now developing the assessment model, so you cannot write exams. So it is true that in some of these things, sometimes the consultation that are having, yes, is there, but it is not. It's not broad enough to reach out to the people that are going to implement. I believe that we are going to learn a lesson from this. We are now going to do the JHS and SHS. How do we ensure that the teachers, yes, government formulates educational policies and the teachers who belong to the Ghana Education Service implement, but we should also ensure that they should exactly know what they want to implement, because If you are bringing me something that I should implement and have very little knowledge about it, then it's not too good. So we believe that government and the Ghana Education Service, the NACA, and everybody that is involved should always ensure that the stakeholders, and one major stakeholder like the teachers, should always, they should get their input, get them involved, get them actively involved, get them motivated, so that this will succeed.
Okay, Mr. Pateanti, so how do we resolve this then? It means that the students are going for good Christmas, no assessment from all that they've learnt, and what will be your own assessment of what has taken place this term in the public schools using the GES curriculum? Well, all of them use the GES curriculum.
So yes, the students are going on Christmas without examination. I think it's not a big issue because that's the first term. Normally, even in the universities, when there are challenges, you know, we ask students to go back and come back, go and come back after the semester, after the break, and they write, these things happen. So that would not be an issue. And again, yes, they were not having the requisite textbooks. So I know teaching and learning might have happened in most of the schools, but we cannot say for sure whether they were solely in line with the competencies designed and stated in the curriculum. So we would not be so certain about the kind of teaching and learning that have gone on in our basic schools for this particular term. We know that the teachers have done their best for that, I'm very sure. But then to be able to achieve the aim of the new curriculum for this term, it would be very difficult. So we're hoping that moving into the next term, these two documents, which are very important for the teachers, should be made available. We know that the relevant authorities are working around the clock to get these documents ready for the teachers. But if this happens in the second term and it ends in the third term, then our education is heading into crisis. I need to also state this, that we have said time and again that you cannot prepare a product and then hand it over to somebody who is supposed to market the product without the input of the one who is supposed to market the product. That is how our policies in the education sector have been over the years. We always...
I don't understand you. Are you saying that the teachers were not consulting in putting together the curriculum?
The teachers were not adequately involved. And in Ghana, that is how the system has been. It's not this particular issue. It's been that over the years, that teachers who are supposed to be the implementers of the curriculum are not so much involved in the product, in the development, in the designing, development, planning, and then everything. All they do is the implementation. But if they are the implementers, then we think that the process should start from the bottom and then push up, instead of starting from the top and then bringing it.
Yeah. Instead of the big men sitting in Accra and doing all that. Nat was represented, so at least we had input. But your last word before we take the break.
By and large, I agree with his submissions around the new curriculum and the fact that, you know, part of the challenge is that there is no framework of assessment.
Yes.
And that clearly would always draw me back to the lack of proper planning.
It's not there yet.
The lack of proper planning. Because, I mean, truly, why do you introduce a curriculum when you have not set out the standard?
It's not strange. There's been precedents before.
But the point
I think in '87 when we're having new educational reform.
Very well. So
for over, I think 3 years, students were in limbo.
Given that experience,
it made the first year senior high school, or it used to be SSS.
No, but Roland, shouldn't we have
senior
improved?
Secondary school students suffered a lot.
Yeah. Shouldn't we have improved
at least
on that, knowing this, that it happened before? So the fact that there was no framework.
In our society, we like equalization. So
the fact that there was no framework definitely would have made it very difficult, one, for the students to be assessed in the first place, because by what standard are they going to be assessed? You say it's standard-based, which means that there should be a standard, but the standard has not been set. And then this is also further exacerbated by the lack of teaching and learning material. So quite clearly, it would have been next to impossible for them to say that the students will be assessed at the end of this term. In other way, I think it's detrimental.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, the two of you. You want to say something, Lawrence?
Yes, all I want to say is that we want to assure our teachers that
You're collecting their monies for them.
yes, as for the money, we collect it. We are seriously ensuring that they get their money. And we are also wishing them well, encouraging them to continue to work harder as we, the leadership, are working with them.
Oh, they work hard. They are home. You said they should work harder.
Oh, yeah, they'll resume. They will resume
Okay.
when.
So when do you intend going to the classroom?
We will go to the classroom when we have been able to resolve the issue. Get something concrete, something good that will make us happy.
Mr. Daniel Afedu is Deputy General Secretary of NATS. He says that NATS membership, as well as the two other organization members, NAGRAT and then the coalition, they will go back to the classroom when they have to go back to the classroom. Well, we've also had in the studio Dr. Clement Apak, Member of Parliament for Busa South, but also a Deputy Ranking Member of Parliament Education Committee, speaks extensively on education, and will always be sending you messages when he sees something wrong and says that, Charlie, this thing is worthy of notes. He said, okay, great insights. Thank you very much, Dr. Apak. Yeah, also used to be, before he became a Member of Parliament, used to be a lecturer with the University of Ghana. Used to interview me a lot back in the day.
Do you have to add all of that?
Yeah, to show that you really know your field when it comes to all that. But look, we're taking a break. When we come back, the UNDP, they have a new report out. It's indicating, I tell you this, that African countries, including Ghana, we've made significant strides in advancing human development. Now, it's not only that, we're gaining ground, for example, on primary education, despite all the related issues about curricular implementation and all, and health as well. But we have a new generation of inequalities apparently opening up. Now, if left unchecked, it threatens to undermine further progress made and also makes it harder for those already behind to catch up. We'll tell you all about this next. Stay with us.